This is part 11, character 27 through 29. Link in description. If you enjoy this what if, then like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Start chapter 27. Hope you enjoy. Trouble 1. Tilde 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 tilde. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. A few minutes later. We're being followed, Pakun stated, making Shikamaru groan as we ran through the trees. Of course we are, Shikamaru muttered to himself. Why couldn't this have been easy? Do you know how many? Sakura asked. No, the pug replied. But they don't smell friendly. Hold on, I called, pausing on a branch for a moment to focus on my ears. It was faint, but I was just able to catch the sound of several footsteps coming from behind us. A split second later I took off again, catching up with my team in no time. There's 9 of them, and from the sound of it, they're gaining on us, I stated, getting looks from everyone that wasn't Fu. I just saw Sakura open her mouth, probably to ask how I knew, when Fu interrupted her. So what do we do? She asked. I vote we turn around and bash their skulls in. Fu slammed her fist into her palm, emphasizing her point, no doubt wearing an excited smirk. There are so many reasons why that's not an option, I don't even have time to explain them all, Shikamaru stated flatly, earning a huff from Fu. You're no fun, she muttered. Well, we have to do something, Sakura said, coming up beside Shikamaru. Even if they don't catch up to us, we're leading them straight to Sasuke. And what a pity it would be if there was one less emo in the world, Fu said, causing Sakura to start giving off more killing intent than I thought she was capable of. Fu, now's not the time, I stated before Sakura could retaliate. I think our best option would be leaving someone behind as a decoy, Shikamaru said, bringing us back to the topic at hand. A regular ambush won't work, so we're going to need someone to stay behind and stall or the others. But wouldn't that be a suicide mission? Sakura asked quietly. Most likely. A strained silence followed while we processed this information. I don't know what the others were thinking, but I had some pretty conflicting thoughts running through my head. On one hand, I really didn't want to die. I'd went through so much this last month in order to overcome my new disability, and I didn't want it all to go to waste here. On the other hand, I didn't want any of them to die either. As far as I was concerned, they were my friends, and I didn't want my friends to die if I could help it. After all, protecting those precious to you is what makes you strong. I could hear the QB chuckling lightly in my mind, but didn't offer me any advice. Guess he was leaving the decision up to me. Fantastic. I'll do it, a voice said that wasn't my own. My head snapped around to find Fu with her hand raised. I'm a pretty damn good distraction, if I do say so myself. That, and I have several tricks up my sleeves that will probably get me out of there without actually dying. No, Shikamaru said, not even bothering to look at her as he spoke. We need someone smart. You barely know me, you don't know how smart I am. You act like Naruto. That's a good enough indicator to me, he stated, ignoring my glare. He pulled himself to a stop on one of the branches, leading us to follow suit. Guess it has to be me. After all, my jutsu is the best fit for the job. Are you Sue? Sakura tried to ask. Okay, I exclaimed over her. Go show them who's boss. Yeah, knock those asses on there. Well, asses. Fu replied, just as enthusiastically as Shikamaru sighed. It's like having 2 of him, Shikamaru muttered before turning to head in the opposite direction. All right, let's go, I shouted, darting forward. Which way, puppy dog? It's Pakun, and that way, he said, using his nose to point. A moment later we launched ourselves back into the trees, leaving Shikamaru behind. After a minute or two I noticed a certain smell seemed to be getting more prominent as we went, the very unnerving smell of sand mixed with blood. There were other smells that were growing stronger too, like polished wood and that of a dry, desert-like wind, but they weren't as unsettling. I could also smell Sasuke in the distance, who always insisted that he smelled of vengeance even though I know now it's just tomato plants, told me we were going in the right direction. So, are we following the Sandy Death Trap or the Tomato Avenger? I wondered. Hakun looked back at me for a moment while Fu chuckled. Tomatoes, he answered, before turning back to his task. Cool, I nodded in approval. How do you actually follow a scent? There's some sort of trick to it, right? You're not just Naruto, Sakura yelled. What? I was curious. Save it for when we're not in the middle of a mission. Fine, I muttered with a huff. They've stopped moving, Hakun informed us, making me a bit confused. Sasuke and Gaara. No, our pursuers. Seems Shikamaru was successful. Hell yeah, I knew that lazy ass was worth something. Fu yelled before getting shushed by Sakura. Quiet, she whispered furiously, turning around to look at Fu. Do you want them to find us again? Because if you keep shouting they will. No sooner had Sakura turned back around did Fu stick her tongue out at her. I shook my head at her but said nothing. A few minutes of silence later Hakun spoke again. They've stopped, the pug stated simply. I thought they were already stopped. I asked. No, Sasuke, he answered, his tone exasperated. Don't get huffy with me, you're the one not using names. There's also someone else following his trail. Who? Sakura asked for us all. I don't know, but they're not human, the dog replied ominously. Feeling a little nervous for my emo teammate, I took a large sniff of the air, sorting out the smells I already recognized and looking for one that shouldn't belong there. I found one almost immediately. Whoever it is, smells like bugs, I replied, getting a glance from Fu. Well, it's not me, she replied. A different type of bug. Oh, she said simply. Are they an ally? How am I supposed to know? It's not like I can smell the symbol on their headband. I'm pretty sure you shouldn't be able to smell people either, Sakura pointed out. Only if you don't have an awesome nose like mine, I said, getting a chuckle out of Fu and a sigh out of my teammate. Anyways, they kinda smell familiar. Like I've met them before somewhere. I landed on a branch, just noticing two ninjas facing each other as if they were ready to fight. One of which had what looked like cat ears on his head and the other the ends of a trench coat waving in the breeze. Excuse me, I called, getting their attention. Did either of you happen to see a lost duckling smelling of tomato plants come through here? Naruto. Just keep going, the guy with the trench coat said quietly. Okay, thanks, I said with a grin as I took off again. Cuckoo Cacho, I heard Fu whisper to him as we passed the trenchcoat shinobi, getting a small twitch in response. Did he seem familiar to anyone else? I asked curiously. That was Shino, Sakura shouted. Ooh, I said, drawing it out longer than necessary. That's why the bugs. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Same time. I should have known it was you. The Sandame stayed focused on his opponent, trying desperately to ignore the battle raging just outside the barrier. It's not like he would be able to help them from where he was, nor would they be able to help him. Therefore, Orochimaru needed his entire attention or else he feared he would be unsuccessful in eliminating the threat. Don't blame yourself, after all you're getting much too old for all of this, Orochimaru replied as he abandoned the Cage's robes to reveal his normal sound clothes, bow and all. You know, you could have avoided this long ago. If you had made me Hokage instead of that martyr Namikaze, then you would still be enjoying your retirement. And let all of Konoha become your play toy. I think not, he said simply. He closed his eyes for a moment, locking away any sentimentality he had left for his student. I would rather wear these robes for 100 years and deal with a mountain of paperwork the size of the Hokage monument, than ever give them to you. The Sandame's eyes flashed open, determination burning in them as he threw aside his own cage garb, revealing his battle uniform underneath. They stared at each other for a while before leaping forward, each preparing their own attack. Sarutobi threw a shuriken before flashing through a bunch of hand signs. He didn't even need to say the name of the move as the single shuriken multiplied into hundreds, all aimed at Orochimaru. But the snake Sannin had already been prepared for this. Before the shuriken could find their mark, two coffins burst out of the shingles in front of him. There were multiple muffled thumps as the shuriken embedded themselves in the soft wood. A third one started sprouting from the roof as well, quite a bit slower than the other two. The jutsu he was using seemed to have trouble summoning it. This gave the Sarutobi plenty of time to send it back to where it had come from. 2 out of 3, not too bad, Orochimaru said to himself. I wasn't sure that last one was going to work anyways. Dead demon seals can be kinda finicky like that. Why are you doing this, anyways? The Sandaime asked, making Orochimaru chuckle lightly at the question. The snake man stepped out from behind the coffins, choosing to stand proudly next to them. You mean other than personal vengeance? He asked. When Sarutobi didn't answer, he continued. Well, I guess you could say that I hate to be bored, and there's nothing more boring than watching a world that doesn't change. That and I couldn't let you keep all these young, promising specimens to yourself. They're called children, Orochimaru. They're living, breathing human beings. They're not children any longer, sensei. They're ninjas, a rank you gave them, by the way, Orochimaru stated as Sarutobi narrowed his eyes at him. If you didn't want these children in danger, then maybe you shouldn't have placed them in your army. Enough. I won't let any harm come to the younger generation. Not from you, or anyone else. Orochimaru's grin widened as he laughed loudly, his voice echoing throughout the barrier. The Sandaime stared at him in bewilderment as the snake-like man finally calmed down, wiping tears of amusement from his eyes. Oh sensei, it's a little late for that. End chapter 27. Start chapter 28. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Trouble 1. Tilde 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 tilde. Oh sensei, it's a little late for that. Sarutobi stared at him blankly for a moment. What could his student have possibly done to those children that he wouldn't have known about? Had he ordered them to be targeted directly in order to snuff out Konoha's will of fire? He dismissed the thought almost immediately. As warped as Orochimaru was, he didn't do anything unless it benefited him, and killing off a whole generation of young ninjas would give him nothing. After all, he liked hiring ninjas about this age, and he couldn't hire any of them if they were dead. The only thing Orochimaru would gain would be revenge, but he would theoretically accomplish that by killing the Sandaime, so it was useless. Therefore, if he wasn't talking about the generation of Genin, then he had to be talking about one in particular. The only one out of the group that Sarutobi could think of was the young Uchiha his students been eyeing. We've already taken care of that curse mark you left on Sasuke's neck, Sarutobi replied, after a few moments of thought. This elicited another laugh from his student, thought the snake Sannin was able to keep it under control this time. I don't know which is funnier, Orochimaru said, chuckling around his words, the fact that you think that seal will hold or that you think I'm talking about him. Who else would you be talking about? Sarutobi asked hesitantly. You don't know. I would think you'd have been the first to find out, Orochimaru stated, seemingly lost in thought. Unless he knew you'd remove his ninja status. That's what happened, wasn't it? That kid was actually smart enough to figure that out before informing the world. Color me impressed. Who are you talking about? The Sandaime demanded, a feeling of dread taking hold. You see, during my stroll in the Forest of Death, there was another genin that caught my attention. Dumb as a rock, yet he was able to get the drop on me. Twice. The Sannin grinned, as if the memory amused him. He's quite an interesting specimen, and I'd love to figure out what makes him tick. But he was in my way. The best solution to an unpredictable variable would be to get rid of it, but then I'd lose the chance to study it. Luckily I thought of a much better solution. What did you do? Sarutobi's blood ran cold as he hoped his assumption was wrong. It didn't quite work as I planned, I'll admit, Orochimaru said, grinning at his mentor. When I ordered Kabuto to take his sight, I had thought his disability would be a lot more obvious. All anyone would have to do was watch him flounder around the room and they'd notice something wrong. Then he'd be off the squad and out of my hair in a snap. But he was more stubborn than I had calculated. Now, he's taking things seriously, he's even created a new jutsu that I've never heard of before. From what I can tell, it's quite similar to the Byakugan, therefore making it quite valuable to me. Funny how the very thing I had done to weaken him, forced him to become even stronger. I can't wait for the chance to study him. Blind. You blinded one of my genin. Haven't you figured out who? I thought it would be obvious after all that. No, not him, Sarutobi whispered. Not Naruto. Good guess. I suppose you still deserve the title the professor. Images of the blonde child flashed through his mind once more, this time proving things he hadn't wanted to believe. Naruto's actions before the prelims, his difficulty fighting Kiba, Kakashi's sudden protective streak when it came to him, even Jiraiya's odd training routine for the boy. All of these things grudgingly lined up with what Orochimaru was telling him. How could you do this to him? The Sandaime asked, his voice rising again. Hasn't he been through enough already? Why did you have to take away his sight as well? I already explained myself. I won't do so again. Orochimaru's amusement finally faded as he turned back to the matter at hand. You should worry less about him and more about yourself. After all, the Sannin paused for a moment as the coffins opened, revealing the Shadaime and Nadaime standing inside. 3 against 1 aren't very good odds. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Same time. I sniffed the air with the frown. There were new smells that mingled with Sasuke's and Gaara's. They were the scent of fresh blood and upturned dirt along with a faint hint of ozone. They've started fighting, haven't they? I asked Pakun. The small pug simply nodded. Great. The Tem just couldn't wait 2 minutes. Apparently not, Fu replied, way too cheerfully. We'll kick his ass for it later. You know, after we saved him and all. That's your answer for everything, isn't it? Sakura asked, sounding very disapproving. No, just most things. Fu chuckled lightly as Sakura huffed in annoyance. You don't even like Sasuke, do you? I barely know the guy, Fu replied. But from what I've seen of him, no, not really. Then why are you even here? Sakura exclaimed, all her annoyance towards the other girl finally coming to a head. Because this is a hell of a lot better than sitting in an arena not being allowed to do anything, she said in a carefree tone. That's a horrible reason to go save someone, especially Sasuke. I have other reasons as well, just none of them are because of an infatuation with the dramatic emo. How dare you? Pakun and I sighed in unison as the two continued to bicker back and forth, no doubt alerting the whole area that we were there. If they keep this up, Gaara will know we're coming before we ever get there, the small pug muttered. I nodded in agreement. I was in the process of figuring out how to get the girls to quiet down without them turning on me when I noticed Pakun's ears perk up. A moment later a faint, strange chirping reached my ears. Shut up, I exclaimed, no longer caring about their argument. Before either of them could complain, I continued. Do you hear that? Both of them stopped speaking for a moment, spending the time to listen to their surroundings. The chirping was getting louder but I wasn't sure if they could hear it or not. You mean the chirping? Fu asked after a few seconds. I nodded. Yeah, I can hear it. Barely. What's wrong with chirping? We're in the forest. Forests have birds. Birds chirp. Sakura pointed out shortly. I hate birds, Fu muttered. What bird would bring attention to themselves with this many shinobi running through their woods, especially with at least one of them giving off a strong killing intent? Pakun pointed out. That's Chidori. What the heck is a child Oreo? Fu questioned. Chidori is my sensei's lightning attack, the one that Sasuke used in the exam. I explained, getting a small O from her. How many of those can he do? His limit's 2 per day, but judging by the ozone smell, that would be his third, Hakun answered, sounding a bit worried. It was about then that the chirping cut off abruptly, followed by an unnerving laughter. Hakun and I shared a look before launching ourselves forward even faster, leaving the other two to catch up. There was no time left for petty arguments or explanations. We needed to get there, now. A few moments later I could just make out 2 figures just ahead of us. One was definitely Sasuke, despite there being a slight, purple-ish aura to his figure. He was laying on a branch, struggling to get up. If I had to guess, I'd have to say it was from chakra exhaustion. The other was leaking so much red chakra that I was surprised that no one from the village noticed yet. His figure was kinda warped as well, not quite looking like everyone else did. His left arm was too big, his ear was kinda pointy, and he seemed to have a large tail attached to him. He had a feral grin spread so widely across his face that even my chakra echoes could pick it up. Just then he lunged towards my teammate, his larger arm raised to strike. But before he could do so, I gathered chakra in my legs and leapt forward, my raised fist soon connecting with the normal side of his face. I skidded to a stop a little ways in front of Sasuke, keeping my focus on Gaara as he tumbled to the ground with an angry yell. The younger Jinchuriki stumbled to his feet a moment later as I heard my companions join me. 2 sets of footsteps, a girl and a dog, landed a bit behind me, no doubt fussing over the fallen Uchiha, while the last settled to a stop by my side. Wow, he doesn't look happy, I heard Fu say with a small whistle of amazement. You can say that again, I muttered as the other boy's snarls reverberated through the trees. Wow, he doesn't look. She cut off mid-sentence as Gaara attacked once again, making the pair of us dodge out of the way. He landed on our old branch with a hiss as we came to a halt a few feet away. That was rude. That's what you get when you tell bad jokes while in combat, I told her. Admit it, you would have done the same thing. Focus, Fu, we have a mission, I said, avoiding a response. Which is taking down this guy. No, it's to make sure he doesn't kill my jackass of a teammate. You mean that one? She asked, pointing to the prone figure right behind Gaara. It was about then that all 3 of us realized that when we dodged out of the way, we accidentally left our comrade with a small dog and Sakura as his only defense. I swore as the Sand Jinchuriki decided to take advantage of this to finish what he started. Unable to get there fast enough, I could only watch as Gaara used his large arm to swat Sakura away like she was no more than an annoying bug. She was sent flying through the air into a tree, where she fell to the ground, most likely unconscious. He then turned his attention to my other teammate, bringing his arm down towards him. I was barely quick enough to get him out of there before the large claw destroyed the branch he was sitting on. When Gaara realized what was happening, he tried to follow me, but was distracted when Fu's fist came out of nowhere, missing his face by a few centimeters. Landing on the ground, I rushed over to where Sakura was laying. I placed 2 fingers on her throat to check her vitals, and after finding a heartbeat and feeling her breathing, I dumped Sasuke nearby for safekeeping. Stay, I told him. Not bothering to stick around for his complaints, I immediately jumped into the trees in order to join the fight once again. When I got back, I took a short moment to watch Fu fight. She seemed to be handling herself quite well, all things considered. She was quick enough to dodge his attacks, and seemed to even be landing a few hits of her own. She had something surrounding her arms all the way up to her elbows that seemed to enhance her punches. Whatever it was seemed to be constantly moving and not very solid, making it very difficult for my chakra echoes to pick up. You know you can. Help me at any time, Fu shouted as she dodged another attack, this time almost getting a haircut in the process. Oh, right, I exclaimed. I jumped forward in order to join her only to get stopped by the blonde Kunoichi, her fan held out in front of her threatening. I had noticed her hanging out near the edge of our self-appointed combat zone but didn't think she would be getting involved anytime soon. I won't let you team up on him, Tamari said. Are you kidding me? The guy's insane, I argued, already fed up with everything. He's probably going to kill everyone in this area, including you, if we don't stop him. Insane or not, he's still my brother. Tamari raised her fan, sending a large gust of wind in my direction. I was dodged out of the way, its gust shredding the tree that I had been standing in front of. Well, this is going to be fun, I muttered to myself. End chapter 28. Start chapter 29. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Trouble 1. Tilde 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 tilde. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. A few minutes later. I take it back, this isn't fun, I said as I barely dodged another one of her attacks. Not one bit. I sent another round of clones at her, hoping that a few of them would actually make it close enough to land a hit, but that never happened. With a wave of her fan she dispelled them all before focusing back on me. I jumped out of the way as she brought down her fan once again, sending another bout of wind towards me, somehow catching my arm in the attack. I skidded to a stop on a branch a few feet away, my hand gripping my wound instinctively. It was only a graze, not serious enough to warrant much attention. I glared at Tamari as I ignored the smell of my own blood filling my nose. She didn't move while I wiped my hand clean and grabbed a pair of kunai. I needed a new tactic, something she wouldn't see coming. Unfortunately, her planning skills were at a level higher than mine. After all, she gave Shikamaru a run for his money in that area. She was a long-range fighter who excelled in her field. The only way to beat her would be in a close corner fight where she wouldn't have room to use her fan. But there was no way of getting that close without her blowing me away. I thought that I might be able to use my kunais to deflect her wind, hoping that would be enough to get close. It wasn't the best idea, but I really didn't have many options at the moment. I tensed my muscles, getting ready to leap at her once again just as someone was knocked into me, almost sending me tumbling to the ground. Hey, watch it, Fu yelled right next to me. You ran into me, I shouted, turning to find her already looking at me. Before I could continue, she shoved me aside just in time for her to punch at the gust of wind aimed at my back. I thought for sure she had been hit as leaves were flung off their trees, obscuring my vision. When they finally settled, I found that I was wrong. In fact, the only damage she had taken was a few small cuts on said forearm and the disappearance of one of her arm jutsus. And there goes the rest of my water gauntlet. As if the sand wasn't bad enough, she growled in annoyance. She threw the other off with the flick of her arm, the substance making a sound more like a mud splat than that of pure water. A moment later she went through a few hand seals, making what I assumed was water come out of her bag and coat her arms once again. Go handle the sand man, will ya? His weird ground jutsu keeps muddying up my water jutsus. It's a horrible match. I'll do much better with Little Miss Pigtail Fail than against him. Pigtail Fail, Tamari exclaimed indignantly. You can't just change opponents mid-fight, I yelled a moment later, getting back to my feet. Why not? Fu asked, most likely with a large smile across her face. We're ninjas, aren't we expected to do tricks like this? If not, then we aren't very good ninjas, are we? I opened my mouth to argue but was interrupted when I had to dodge a large sand-covered claw aimed at me. I landed on a branch a few feet away, shooting a glare at my ally. Have fun, she called back as she charged towards the now irate fan wielder. No promises, I muttered back before turning to face my new opponent. I suppose you already got the memo about the partner change. I don't care who I fight, I'll kill both of you in the end. He said back, his grin so wide that even my jutsu could pick it up. Then they will join you. He inclined his head in the direction of my wounded teammates, my eyes narrowed in response. Over my dead body, I growled back, tightening my grip on my kunais. Kit, I think that's the plan regardless, the QB answered slyly. I gave him the mental equivalent to a pointed glare before charging at the other Jinchuriki. I noticed, I replied shortly while attempting to dodge Gaara's oversized arm. I was doing pretty good at the moment, but I knew I couldn't keep this up forever. Any suggestions? The Kyuubi hummed in thought but otherwise stayed silent. Any time would be nice, I demanded as the claw got a little too close for comfort. Gaara immediately took another swing at me that I blocked with my kunai, only to hear a faint clink come from the knife. Gata loved cheap craftsmanship. Patience. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to answer or not. What? You've got to be kidding me. We don't have that much time. Correction. You don't have that much time. I have all the time in the world. And then some, the fox answered. Normally I'd let you fight your own battles. After all, you can't become stronger if I'm winning all your fights for you. But I think I'll make an exception today. After all, this is my little brother we're talking about and he can be kind of a handful. You don't say, I shouted back as I threw my now useless kunais at my opponent only for his sand to absorb them before shooting them right back. I dodged out of the way just in time. The knives then collided into the tree behind me, shattering on contact. Remind me to find a new weaponsmith when this is all over. Right now he's only about halfway transformed, therefore he still has some vulnerable points we can focus on, he said, ignoring my last comment. Luckily he doesn't see you as a big enough threat to finish the change, so we should probably work fast before he changes his mind. And, where are they? I'm getting there. Hold your horses, he hummed in thought as I dodged several sand projectiles aimed my way. There's one that would work and a few more that might work. Give me the one that will work. I don't like that one. Why the hell not? Because it's a very underhanded way of winning and we can do something a lot more fitting to our position. You mean your position, because I'm a low-ranking ninja. I'll win any way I can, that isn't outright cheating. I landed on a branch for a moment only for Gaara to knock the tree down and forcing me into the air once again. So what's his damn weak spot? Right below his tail, he answered with a sigh of defeat. It's not a space that's normally targeted, so he won't have that much of his armor there. You mean his butt? Yes, you annoying twit. His butt. All right, I said, a sly grin spreading across my face. That's something I can work with. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Same time. All right, let's get this show on the road, Fu said with a grin as she slammed a fist into her palm. The gauntlets splashed on impact only for the droplets to return to them only moments later. The sooner I finish you off, the sooner I can make sure Naruto-chan doesn't get himself killed. I won't let you team up on my brother, Tamari answered, tightening her grip on her fan. I'm not planning on giving you much a choice, Fu answered with a smirk. You'll be asleep in the dirt by the time I leave here. I doubt it. Tamari swung her fan once again, sending a large gust of wind straight at the mint-haired girl, making Fu dodge quickly behind a tree. Is that all you can do? She called over the roar of the wind. Because I've seen Academy students with a wider variety of moves than you. The wind stopped then, leaving only silence in their little corner of the forest. Fu stood there for a moment, waiting for another round to start up once again. But after about half a minute of this quiet, she decided the blonde was definitely up to something. She peeked around the other side of the tree, only to find the spot the kunoichi had been occupying was now empty. Fu didn't have the time to look for her though, as she saw movement out of the corner of her eye accompanied by the sudden urge to duck. She did so just as Temari's fan buried itself into the tree right where her head had been a moment ago. Still crouched low, Fu took advantage of it quickly as she shot out a leg, sweeping the blondes out from under her. Tamari quickly recovered, landing firmly on her feet on a lower branch. All right, I guess you're not a one-trick pony after all, Fu said with a smirk as she straightened up. Still not very impressed though. You will be when I'm done here. Temari's glare intensified as she placed her weapon behind her, opening the fan again. Fu jumped higher up the tree as Temari swung her weapon, sending wind at her once again. She was forced to do this several times until a large explosion rang through the woods, followed closely by a loud animal-like scream. The scream sent chills down Fu's spine as Temari's eyes widened in fear. It didn't take much thought to guess who that had been from. Fu was the first to recover and notice her opponent's inattention. Temari was still staring at where the sound originated when Fu leapt at her, a water-covered fist sending the blonde falling to the ground. Not impressed at all, Fu said, watching her land in the dirt before jumped down, intent on finishing the fight quickly. End chapter 29. If you enjoy this what if then like, comment, and subscribe for more content. I'll see you all in the next video.